Hello, PHCC. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 14 of PHCC Rocks, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening all over America related to PHCC, the National Plumbing, Heating, Cooling Contractors Association. I'm your host, Joel Long, and we're coming to you from the great state of North Carolina today, which is the worldwide headquarters of PHCC. Right, Chuck?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Here in Indiana.
in India or Indiana. Day frame, that's right. We're doing this podcast because we believe that telling the stories of what's happening in PHCC just shows us how much of an impact we are. And we're here today to show you another reason why PHCC rocks. Today, we've got a great show, and it's called the Mark and Chuck Show. And today it's the Mark, Chuck, and Mike Show. And this thing's been going all over the country for years. And it's one of the biggest reasons that PHCC is successful and viewed so in such a good light all over the country is these three gentlemen. And first is Mark Valentini. He's the Director of Legislative Affairs. And then Chuck White. And I'm not going to clap Chuck, but I'm going to stay away from that. But
Please.
I clap when we talk about Chuck because regulatory affairs is not that sexy most of the time. But the work we do on legislative affairs, on regulatory affairs after something is passed is really where we lose it if we're not really careful. And so that work is incredible, Chuck. And so thanks. And then Mike Dolan, the chairman of the Governmental Affairs Committee, probably one of the toughest job, herding all those cats all over the country in that group. But just Mike's made a massive improvement in our association with all that work you've done. So welcome, gentlemen. Glad to have you here.
Thanks, Joel. Thank you.
If you want to, Mike, if you could, I think, we've talked on some of the other podcasts. PHCC is a big umbrella group organization that's made up of all kind of smaller pieces and parts and entities inside that really makes us go. Can you, and I think a lot of times the committees, people may not even really understand what they do, and how in depth and how wide they go. Can you give us maybe some background and understanding of what this group does?
All right. So our Government Relations Committee, is set up to track legislative and regulatory affairs. So the state, the national, has a system that is based on keywords and shoots then to mark different bills, different things that come across that need our attention. So Mark will then look at those, find the ones that pertain to us, bring it to the committee. The committee will then go through it, banter back and forth, see which way we want to go, then make a recommendation to the board of directors to see if there's a position or we get a lot of requests to sign on to different letters or different actions by other trade partners. So we review those. That's also very important because, as we discussed, we don't want to water down the PHCC name by signing on everything. It has to be specific. We have to go through it and make sure it's very pertinent to what we do. So that's Mark's job. And by the way, a lot of the states don't know this, but on our PHCC website, you can click on your own state and it will do the same thing for your state legislation, which is, for the smaller states who don't have lobbyists, it's a great way to monitor that. So that's something that National provides right on our website. Then Chuck has the great job of dealing with these laws once they get passed. And then
it's easy. After they get passed, then it's easy, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. There's no instruction or anything in these laws when they pass them. So they go off to the groups that are then in charge of putting them into effect, which is a whole nother ballgame that Chuck just loves to deal with.
Hurting the bureaucrat.
Yeah.
So it's something that we have to do. We have to do it on a national level. The states have to do it on the state level. We help the states do what they need to do with information and backing from what we have on national, but it's such a valuable part of the association.
Yeah, I've always I've sat in on some of those committees, been on that committee before with you, Mike, and different people. And, it's interesting. It's a clearinghouse to me. It's a clearinghouse of information that we're trying to, state by state and then nationally. There's so many bills that are passed each year or that come up to the floor and a lot of them aren't passed. But I mean, keeping up with all that is just a massive undertaking that's expensive. And I think I see often that's worth our membership. We hear all this value talk all the time about our membership. And if you start getting into that, it is so easy to see how our membership, just the legislative and regulatory work that we do nationally and at the state level pays for it's such a valuable thing.
And the thing is really, and we're doing the work for the whole entire industry, which is a shame because, we should have a lot more members based on that.
Yeah.
Because the work we do benefits everybody. And, we don't mind doing that. That's what we have to do. But, we wish that more non-members would see the work we do for them.
Yeah, we need to get the word out more. That's maybe part of what this is about.
Well, yeah, I mean.
Well, no, it is, but I think you're right. And this is another one of those things that we're doing for the right reasons, not just our members. I think that's a key point. Yeah, it really is. Yep. So, Mike, that's a great overview. Mark, you got anything you want to expand?
It's a lot to keep up with. There's a lot of stuff, especially, at the state level to keep up with, and it's a full-time job, right? So if you are a contractor, you're running a business, you don't have time to dedicate to this, and yet, what's going on, what legislatures are deciding around the country and in Washington, D.C., can have such a major impact on your business that it's important to know what's going on. And so that's why Chuck and I are here, so that we can identify what's going to have an impact on your business and help keep you informed, so you don't have to spend the hours that it requires to keep up with it. So we're happy to do it.
Yeah.
And I think the committee function is really important because it's not Mark and I just making the decisions.
Oh, yeah.
That, we have to get the reflection back from the members about what all these things are. So when we're not out here winging it, and we really need the members to come forth for these committees and be our sounding board. So, when we have an impression of something, we don't just go off and do something opposite of what really the members want.
Right. We're not operating in a vacuum. Everything that we do, every issue that we advocate on, we run it through the committee, we run it through the board, spend a lot of time on the phone speaking with members and getting their input as well. So, unless there is no consensus on a particular issue, and there are a few of those, when I go before a member of Congress, or if I talk to a staffer, or if I'm talking to any other industry representatives, whatever information I am exchanging with those people, I make sure that, it's information that's been vetted by our own members.
Yeah. And, I'm hearing you, and I'm also, I've seen it too as a massive opportunity to connect with our partners. I see a lot of work that the committee does and you guys do and Mike mentioned it too on signing on with letters, but our partners like Bradford White and, Federates, different partners, where we are really gauging their perspective too, because all of these issues touch all of us across different levels. And so, Chuck, to your point, getting that view from the committee members, the contractors, and in your view, Mark, I remember several issues where I'm picking up the phone maybe a couple years ago going, we need to go burn down. And you're like,
back that bus up.
We have to be careful. No.
Let's write a letter. Yeah.
You touch on an important point. I think that, our members do care about what's going on in government, not just in how it impacts their business, but personally as well. And so we have to be careful that if we're approaching an issue, we're not doing it, in a way that's emotionally charged. We have to be, very calculated. Everything that we touch on, it's because this is going to have an impact on the industry, and it's going to have an impact on the way that contractors are running their businesses, and it's going to have an impact on their bottom line, and it's going to have an impact on their ability to keep their people employed. and it impacts the manner in which they keep their customers safe and the way they serve their customers. So, anything outside of that out of that criteria, is probably, an issue that we're going to avoid.
You're going to try to get contractors to avoid it.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's also another piece to that, and I've seen this multiple times in some of the things I've worked on, that the manufacturers also, and our partners, are really looking for firsthand what impact it is to us, because sometimes they think things were a really good idea.
Sure.
And they aren't, they're not dealing with the consumer and the day to day.
We're the front.
So we can come to them and say, well, yeah, that sounds good, but this factor or that factor is going to make a difference. And we can kind of move their outlook on some of these things as well. Maybe not, be 100% in line, but kind of blend our viewpoints and come to a common vantage point. And sometimes we can't, and they understand that as well. Sometimes there's things that, for us, we don't like it, but that's the way it's going to be.
Well, and I heard you talk too, that I think we end up a lot of times, if we're not careful, we don't really have a big enough view just from our perspective. And so we gain a lot of knowledge too, tying it all together. And then it's relationship building. You guys, Mark, I've heard you guys talking on this committee. We go to Washington, once a year, but we really need to build those relationships at home, state by state, district by district, and all those kind of things, because you don't want that. You don't want when you really need somebody to be the first time you're talking to them about it. And so you got to build that relationship to being a trusted partner. And I think that's what you guys have done, and the committee nationally has done, and state by state we're doing, but we need more help, right? To that point earlier, the more contractors we can get having those conversations, the stronger that voice will be for us. And so, we're really needing more help state by state.
No, you're right. I mean, relationships are a work in progress. As business people, I think that you guys understand that more than anybody else.
Yeah.
So you can't just touch on a legislator and then expect them to remember you a year down the road. It requires a lot of, regular conversation. And so, when I meet with members of Congress, or more often with their staff, a lot of it is just talking about what's going on in the industry, and not necessarily a specific issue, though we certainly touch on that a lot too, but just kind of laying the groundwork so that when we do have some kind of an emergency or an issue that requires some kind of urgency, that I'm able to reach out to those staffers, and we have that rapport that's already established, so that we have a better chance of achieving our policy ends. And then of course, there is significant turnover on the Hill. You have a lot of staff. They use that as a stepping stone to something bigger in the private sector. And I'm certainly no stranger to that. So we have to, obviously a lot of that is just kind of paying attention to who's coming and going on the Hill, and reaching out to those people as well, and rebuilding those relationships, if you will. So it's a work in progress.
And the opinions vary. When I first started, I guess I've gone up to Washington 10, 11, 12 years, whatever. And before I went, I thought it was all about money too. I think there's this misconception that it's all about donating money, but it's really, I think when you build relationships, you're going to get that phone call when there's a bill, or they'll take your call. And I think, the public and contractors, we're a little cynical that we think it's all about who gave the most money. And I just don't believe that.
No, it plays a role.
Sure.
You're not buying votes. But what you're doing is that, look, I'll be candid here. Elections are expensive. And a lot of it, you have to pay campaign staff, you have to pay for marketing, right? And going on TV. And that requires a lot of money, a lot of resources. And this is stuff that all has to be, it has to be privately raised. This is not something that you can lean on government resources for, right? And so, we have, PHCC has its own political action committee. We make contributions as well. We play the money game as well, but we're using that money to support candidates because we want them to stay in office if they're taking positions that are helpful to our organization and our industry. So, yes, it's about money, but no, it's not about buying votes, because, you know, we have supported candidates. Yes, they've been great to the industry, but on a couple of occasions, they may have taken a vote that wasn't in our best interest. You know, and they do that because, you know, I imagine they have their constituencies in mind, or perhaps that's just one of the issues that we don't see eye to eye on, and that's okay too.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, I think the general member may not see what you do every day, Mark. You know, man, you're our lobbyist up in DC. You are so far away, and you're in the bubble up there, or the whatever we call that now up there. And, you know, so you get up every morning and kind of goof off and eat breakfast and don't do much until about lunchtime, and then you're going to parties all the time, right?
Right. Yeah, that sounds about right.
How I hear it.
Look, Chuck's shaking his head. Yeah,
That's how I hear it.
Right.
So give us like a snapshot of what you think a day. I mean, so people can maybe understand a little bit better.
Well, I think there's pre-pandemic and post-pandemic government affairs at PHCC. So, I mean, post-pandemic, you know, pre-pandemic, you know, I was up on the Hill about a good 2 or 3 times a week, meeting with random offices, just telling them about PHCC, and getting our name out there. Obviously, the pandemic has changed all of that. So whatever I would be doing going up to the Hill is now done by Zoom. You know, I'm constantly trying to reach out to new offices, you know, reaching out to other industry stakeholders, and even, you know, people outside of the industry that are, you know, lobbyists that might have the same position as we do. And we run into that a lot, especially on the tax side. So, you know, obviously reaching out to those people, like doing that through coalitions. So, you know, we're members of at least 2, you know, tax coalitions that, you know, that push for low taxes on small businesses, you know, especially family-owned businesses as well. So we're part of 2 coalitions that focus on that. We're focused on, we have a coalition that focuses on infrastructure, the High Performance Building Coalition, and that's made up of, you know, the building code bodies and other building trades groups. And then we're also part of, you know, more recently in the past 2 years, we're part of a coalition formed by American Gas Association to combat gas bans that we've been seeing across the country. So a lot of my work is conversing with those people, you know, exchanging intelligence so that we have the latest information that could potentially have an impact on our industry. It's a lot of time on the phone. And whenever I'm not on the phone or I'm not on Zoom calls, I'm doing research. I'm reading the political rags to get a sense of what's going on the Hill. You know, so there is you know, a fundraiser and cocktail aspect of it that's also important when it comes to you know, building relationships, maintaining
Sure.
relationships like we were talking about, and also you know, they provide more candid environments for an exchange of intelligence.
Yeah. Well, I think this business part is just like our contracting businesses. It's about relationships. It's about people. It's about understanding. It's about research. It's about knowing technically what you're talking about. It's the same. It's just a little bit different focus on what the outcomes are and what we're trying to accomplish. That's the way I see it a lot too. So anything else you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, I also spend a lot of time speaking with state executives, making sure that I get a sense of what's going on in their states as well, what's having an impact on them and their state capitals, and providing assistance where I can. You know, obviously we want state executives to take the lead on what's going on in their state capitals. And then I try to provide support where possible. We have a program that automatically sends letters to their state legislators. You know, I'll draft up a letter that goes to a legislator advocating for a certain position. We package it up in a link.
And that's at the state level. That's at the state level or the
That's
national
at the state level or the federal level too. We've done
Sure,
that
yeah.
at the federal level as well, and those
Sure,
come
yeah.
from me. But at the state level, you know, the state executive will take whatever link I package up for it, send it to their members. The member will click on the link. They put in their name and their address, and then the letter will go out to their state legislators just based on their address. So it's all automatic. It's, you know, on their side, it's about a 2-minute process. On my side, it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to draft a letter and package it up and send it to the state exec and make sure that they have all the support they need. And then, of course, there's been a bit of travel, especially in the past, you know, three months. Went to talk with QSC at their meeting in Florida. to talk to them about gas bans. And I was amazed at how many people just weren't aware of it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, my recent trips up to New York, and, it was exhausting, just going up there, making the several trips and banging the drums just to have 2 lines of their FY23 budget removed, that would have banned gas, and it would have banned subsidies to help homeowners have a new connection to a gas utility. All of that just to have those 2 lines of language stricken, and it's going to keep coming up. So that's a battle we won, but we still have the war, and so there's going to be a lot more work to do.
Yeah. So, Mark, that's incredible. And if you had to guess, and I know this is a guess, and I know it varies, what percentage would you say you spend on federal compared to state issues?
Depends what time of year, right? So usually first 3 months of the year, most state legislatures are going to be in session. So at that point, it's easily 50-50, right? And
Okay.
at the federal level, unless there's a major piece of legislation getting moved, I think the timing works out for me. Right. The only time it didn't work out was maybe in the first couple of months of the Biden administration. They were pushing, I think at that point it was the 4th tranche of PPP funding and pandemic relief. So that was very much a distraction I didn't want because there is a lot of important stuff going on at the state level. But for the most part, I'd say.
So it varies, but it's 50% at times of the year.
50% at times, and then after March, when most state legislatures have checked out, I still got to pay attention to New York and California, especially. But then my focus shifts more to Congress, because then you have the budget and appropriation cycle is coming up, and I always like to pay attention to what's going on the workforce side to make sure that registered apprenticeship and WIOA and PERC and CTE is getting a good, robust. Getting good, robust funding, and that increases over the previous year. And then the end of the year generally is busy, because then you have an omnibus spending package, and there's always stuff that's trying to be snuck in.
Yeah.
Sometimes to our advantage, and sometimes not so much.
Sure. So, okay, I don't think most of our members get the depth of the time on the state. So I wanted to touch on that a little bit. I think that's I think a lot of times we just say, well, yeah, they're sending some letter, but I mean, it's a huge part of what you do. So let's switch gears a minute. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but we're going to ask Chuck to talk a minute. But so a bill is passed, okay? A pretty unbelievably awesome, favorable bill has passed for PHCC and all of our contractors and America. And it's going to make America better. And all the contractors are patting Mark on the back and Mike on the back, and they go back to sleep. And Chuck reads the bill that we've just all been in favor of, and thank God for Mark Valentini and the committee. And then it goes to Chuck. And then
what did you guys do to me?
You just pretty much described the AIM Act.
I wanted to frame it that way, because I think that's how we operate. I think we go, whew.
Well, that's very fair. And, I came out of the contracting industry. I grew up in the business, and I got drafted into coming to work for PHCC, and I really enjoy what I do. I don't regret a minute of it. But I didn't know much about how Washington, D.C. worked. I mean, I knew where the Washington Monument is, and I knew there was Congress and the White House. But after that, I mean, that's kind of what I knew. And the difference between a bill and a law and what happens, it's an interesting thing. I mean, so Mark is on the legislative world. That's Congress. It goes over to the president. He signs that bill. That's when it becomes a law. And once once the president signs it, it's his baby, and it belongs in his department, in the executive department. And all of the agencies, the Department of Labor, Department of Energy, all of those people, those agencies are the executive branch. And, that's really where the work happens, and where the impact to contractors happens, because, my favorite example, around 2012, there was a change in the Safe Drinking Water Act, And for those of us that have been in the plumbing business a while, the way brass was made changed then. And it became harder to solder, and it had to be lead free and all of these things. Well, what the president signed was maybe 4 or 5 paragraphs, and it goes over to EPA to decide what to do with it, and it comes back 100 pages. How do we implement this? And my first exposure to that was things were getting sent to me. Hey, here's something they're thinking about. What do you think of this? And I read through it with my contractor hat on and think, well, that's maybe the dumbest thing I've ever saw. And they have no idea what this is going to cost, and how are we going to do that? And the brass was one thing. We have to train people about how this is going to work and live with the problems when we don't know how to solder right, and all of those implications. That just gets repeated over and over and over again. And whether that's Department of Transportation or EPA or Department of Energy, my kind of biggest nemesis maybe is Department of Energy. That I've done more work there probably than any of the others, but it's just really impactful, and it can be what really hurts the contractor, and it's where things happen behind closed doors. I mean, Mark can go pre-COVID. It's more challenging now, and I've been there, gone to Ledge Conference. You walk up to one of the house office buildings, and easier than getting on an airplane, you can walk in that building. You go over to the Department of Energy and try to get in. You're not, if you don't have an appointment,
and there's
right, they're not letting you in.
There's no elections. It's a bureaucratic part of the government. Yeah.
And so and they're doing work there that you don't know really anything that's going on until something comes out in the Federal Register that says, hey, we're thinking about this.
Yeah.
I mean, right now there is a bill at Office of Management and Budget. It's not a bill. There's a rule making at Office of Management and Budget, which is they look at that and score it for, what's this going to cost, and is it justifiable, et cetera, et cetera. And it pertains to residential gas furnaces, and it also pertains to commercial gas-fired water heaters. We know it's over there, but we don't know what's in it. And it's going to come back from there to the department, and it will come rolling out. And then I will have to read however many hundreds of pages it is and sort through it, talk to some of our friends and, the manufacturers and AHRI and some other people, and kind of get a sense of, what it contains, and then come to the committee and subcommittee and say, here's what it is. Here's what maybe we like. Here's what probably we don't like. And from that point, we can file comments. Most of the time, all this stuff is available for comments. So we write up logical rebuttals. You can't just say, we think this is stupid and it's the dumbest thing I ever saw. They got a lot of letters like that.
So that's when the contractor translation comes in. Is that what you're
right.
saying?
So
right, Mike. Isn't that
Yeah.
right, Mike? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You have to attack their logic. You thought it would cost this, and it's really going to cost this much more, and you think it's going to last this. You have to go after where they are. And so my job is a lot of reading. It's a lot of writing. And really, I tell people I get paid to argue. I'm kind of good at it. So Mark's your paid lobbyist. I'm your paid arguer.
Perfect. Well, I wanted you to lay that out because there aren't many organizations like ours that are doing both, especially to the depth that we're doing, that you guys are doing. I don't believe that, Mike. I mean, do you see it that way?
Well, we certainly do it very well. And what Chuck didn't mention is that when there's a change of administration, all those interpretations then change again.
Yeah.
So he's then revisiting the same animal every 4 years. Sometimes, depending on the administration, it's a little easier to visit, and then sometimes it's not. So it's a constant struggle, constant battle that he watches, and the committee gets these, gets his report, and then we decide how we should frame it in common sense rebuttal. Yeah. And then Chuck presents our issue, and he does a great job of it.
Yeah, he does. Both of you.
I get a lot of head shaking when I talk to people about things. They're like, this can't be. Well, it is.
This
So-
is really it.
You got, yeah, it really is. And we go, there's no way. But so you guys have done a great job laying out a snapshot for members and anybody that watches this on what you guys do and how you frame it and how you partner and some of the goals. When we were talking earlier before this, we had talked about some big wins and some of those things. There's something that happened, 2 years ago now, COVID and everything that went on. And I think one of the biggest wins, if I'm going to talk about how you guys affected positively our contractor members, it was the information that you guys developed and put out for contractors consistently all through COVID. Can you guys talk about that? Because I don't think that's necessarily a direct connection that a lot of people will see with what we just talked about. But can you talk about that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mark, I think you can take this because I think this was really predominantly in-house. PHCC did a fantastic job
Yeah.
Thank
coming
you.
up with
It
all
was-
the advice they sent out.
It was scary. I think there was a lot of unknowns. We didn't know what was going to happen, especially the first month of the pandemic. All of a sudden people are being asked to stay home and nobody knew what was going on. And so there was a lot of information and a lot of misinformation out there. And so I think there were probably some occasions where, we didn't put out information very quickly. And that's because we wanted to be very careful to make sure that what we were putting out was accurate, because we knew that there were people, it was life and death for a lot of businesses. And there were a few contractors that didn't make it. And they either left or they had to start over again. But we understood the gravity of the situation, at least I like to think that we did. And so we wanted to make sure that whatever we were putting out there was accurate, making sure that you had these idle loans that were available, and people were having issues there. And so we wanted to at least be able to communicate, it's not like everybody's having issues with idle loans right now. You're not the only one. When the PPP program was introduced, again, people were having a hard time, and we wanted to make sure that was communicated. Look, you're not the only ones. It's still new. Once that program finally got off the ground, we made sure that everybody had the resources that they had, that they needed in order to apply for those loans, and get those loans so that they can keep their businesses afloat. Making sure that they understood a lot of the employer mandates that were coming out, especially, there was no moving the needle on that one. Unfortunately, I remember a press conference where, Mitch McConnell was coming out. This is when the second COVID bill was coming out that had the employer mandates in it. And Mitch McConnell, was at this press conference, and he's like, he was asked by someone in the media, what are you gonna, you're supporting these employer mandates. What are you gonna tell your members? And he's essentially like, they're gonna have to bite the bullet and support this. That's how tense the situation was. You had, Republicans having to, to push this so that the American economy could go through. And so we wanted to make sure that everybody knew what was going on, knew the policy implications, and then, I also wanted to make sure that people understood the story as well. Like, this is how we got to this point. And again, I wanted to make sure that information was as accurate as possible, because putting out the wrong information could have put a lot of people out of business. It was really stressful time. But I think we're obviously all stronger for it.
Well, you have to remember it changed our world too, because, I was in North Carolina at a meeting, and I wasn't sure I was going to get home. The world shut down a day later. And so where we participate in a lot of in-person things and a lot of meetings, all those meetings got canceled. And so now what are we going to do? And we pivoted rather quickly, and I got to give credit to our immediately previous boss, Michael Kopp. He made some moves prior to this, positioning, upgrading things at PHCC, so we had the ability to flex to the cloud and the hardware available to do the things that we did. We weren't tied to a bunch of servers and had to be at an office with desktops. People had the ability to do some things that, it was almost like he was a bit of a mind reader or had a crystal ball to know this was coming, because 6 months to a year earlier, changes were made that really made PHCC able to do things that we would not have otherwise been able to do. And he encouraged us to kind of get outside the box and do some things. And, we kind of made a lot of videos that were not things that we did before. And, some of them were a little crude, where we had my chicken scratch on a whiteboard behind me, but we
I remember that.
yeah, well, we really tried to get as much information out to the members as quick as we could, and update. And if we were wrong about something or something changed, let's get that fixed right away. It was an ever evolving thing. So we had to be on our toes and, do what we could for the members. I've told a lot of people, I work with a lot of good people at PHCC that are, they don't come from the industry, but they really want to do well for the members and for the industry, and, whatever you need. And I'm not just talking about Mark and I, everybody that works at PHCC will do what they have to do to benefit the members.
So Mike,
our communications team played a significant role. They played a central role in making sure that information got out there too. So, shout out to Charlotte and the team she had at the time.
Mike, we were talking about big wins before we got on this thing. And, a lot of times we want to say Washington, whatever, the state capital, but that may be, looking back, the biggest win we've had, because contractors felt alone. And, we have this whole tagline, PHCC, you're not alone.
Right. We were front lines. We were out working. 95% of our group worked the whole time. Nothing. Oh boy.
No, you're good.
I'm good. You can see me, but
you can still see
still there
and hear you and all that. You look good, man.
I don't know how I lost you, but in any case, we were still working. So that was important that this information came out to us. How do we go into people's houses? How do we protect our employees while protecting our customers? And, nobody knew anything. All we could do was rely on the information that National did. They did their homework. They did a great job in getting pertinent information out to us so we could keep doing what we had to do in servicing our customers.
Yeah, and consistently putting out those messages too, guys. Take credit for that, because it wasn't a, hey, we put this thing out once and see you in 6 months. It was a consistent, constant as those things changed. And good grief, in the beginning, especially, it seemed like it changed every 3 or 4 days. And so just congrats on that. But from a membership standpoint, I think I have probably heard that more than anything over the last year as a success story. Contractors have not forgotten that, and they know that PHCC was there for them and what you guys did. So that's incredible. The other thing you mentioned briefly, I was in Texas 2 weeks ago, and their licensing thing came up again, where it was just last year, wasn't it? That National took a forefront view and jumped in the middle. Hunter Botto went down there, and you guys really worked hard to help them with their licensing thing. So I think sometimes you guys don't give yourself enough credit for wins, and that's a big win. You go to the state of Texas, my God, they were, just 2 weeks ago when Mark and Grayo and I were there, they were on and on and on about that battle's still out there, but boy, that getting that stay on what could have happened to their state license was a massive win. I
think that's a demonstration.
Joel, it's not all about the big wins. It's really about we push and shove little aspects of certain regulatory reforms or bills that just make them more common sense that will work. So we love the big wins, but we have so many more little tiny wins that really is what this association is really doing to benefit our whole membership in the whole entire industry. And that's Chuck and Mark working day in, day out, phone calls, meetings, just pushing and shoving a little bit. It makes these things work
Yeah, Mike, I
Hopefully.
think your framework of, we're slowly molding the industry by those little wins, right?
Right.
Those little
That's it.
battles. Yeah. You guys got anything to add to that?
Well, I think, what happened in Texas, I think is a testament to the relation, like, again, going back to relationships, right? PHCC of Texas had a strong relationship with the governor's office back in 2019. And I think that was what allowed them to get that sort of stay, that executive order that preserved the plumbing board until the following session of the legislature. They meet every 2 years. And so what happened in the last session of the legislature was that they were able to extend the charter of the plumbing board for another 5 years. So this battle is going to come up for Texas again in 2027. But yeah, back in 2019, I was, not even 3 months on the job. That was my first crisis. So
Chet,
it's going to come up other places too, but I think I'd like y'all to remember that, Mark and I are departments of one. There's one in regulatory and there's one in legislative, and we can get stretched pretty thin, but we rely on some good folks to help us out. Hunter jumped in there to go to Texas, drop of a hat. And we can work with the states to help them if they need it, coach them, help build, little firehouses and help, keep track of things and help move them in the right direction if they need it. We have some states that are very good at this. They're larger states and, have good leadership, but we have other states that don't have many members. We have states that are at large, and we have to do more for them than others. And, but we are blessed that we have members and board members and people who will step up when we need some help in whatever town, whatever city, whatever capital. Can you go read these messages or these talking points or what have you? We don't have to go to all 50 states every day of the week to do all the things that have to be done. We get a lot of help.
But it's a partnership, like you said. You mentioned, I know we talk a lot about workforce. You talk a lot about, a lot of different pieces of it. And I know the gas bans is a current, really big topic that we're seeing all across the country. And I know that's going to be one of our focuses at legislative this year. But can y'all, go into a couple of other issues like the gas bans or whatever, and just maybe give people a snapshot of what you're working on and how you see that right now, maybe some of those other issues? Who wants to solve the gas ban problem?
That's Mark.
I guess that's me.
That's going to be a state issue, state by state, right, Mark?
It is a state by state issue. We brought this up at the legislative conference last year, and I'd like to do that again this year because I want this issue to have national attention, that this is not just going on in 1 or 2 states, this is going on all over the place. Yeah. We recently had this battle in Virginia. All right. There was a fuel choice bill that was introduced by in the House of Delegates, and that would have prohibited local governments in the Commonwealth of Virginia from instituting bans on natural gas connections for new construction, which is a piece of legislation that we would absolutely support, because we don't want customers, we don't want just the American people in general to be limited in the choices that they have to power their homes or to supplement their electricity. And so this bill passed the House of Delegates. It went to the Senate. And so the House of Delegates in Virginia right now is controlled by the Republicans by a pretty thin margin. And in the Senate, it's controlled by the Democrats. And then we have a Republican governor. So the idea is that, and PHCC Virginia took the lead on this issue. I went down to Richmond to help them out, but wanted to make sure that the contractors, that the lawmakers there saw the contractors and that they heard their stories. And the legislature down there, the state Senate down there is very accessible. You just go and you go to the offices and senators are right there waiting to meet with people, no appointment necessary. So that was great. It's the way government should work, by the way. Yeah. And so, all we had to do was just get this bill through the Senate as is, and then get it to Governor Youngkin, and he would have gladly signed it into law. But what happened was it got mutilated in the Senate. the language got severely amended to, where it would say, okay, if a municipal controlled utility was going to discontinue service, they'd have to give ratepayers 3 years notice. And, and then they would have to try to sell the utility in good faith to someone else who would take it over. And then if not, they would auction it to the highest bidder. So not exactly what we wanted. I think a lot of that language stemmed from the fact that the city of Richmond, they have a municipal owned gas utility, and they just wanted to do away with natural gas altogether and just essentially leave people out in the dust.
Sure.
And so, luckily that didn't happen for now. So what happens?
But really that story though is, I know across the country, we think Virginia is pretty conservative. And
it's a purple state, and this is a state that went to Biden pretty comfortably, actually.
No, but I mean, when we just in general, we don't think it's California, and we don't think it's New York, and we don't think it's Jersey, Mike. I mean, we don't.
Easy to make that assumption.
Easy.
And so, in Texas, see, I brought this up in Texas, and everybody just stopped, and they're like, "What are you talking about? We're not California."
It ties to demographics.
It's right, and so I just, but then you got like New York, so it's happening in different places all over the country.
It happened in North Carolina, Joel.
That's right, and so we better be paying attention.
Yeah, you should. No, and a lot of that has to do with demographics. It's easy, I'm a native Virginian. But the thing is, you have to understand that yes, it's a very rural state. You have the Shenandoah Mountains, which is beautiful, a lot of farm country out there. And then, but then you have essentially little pockets, right? Charlottesville, Richmond, Northern Virginia, Fairfax County, where I live, and then the Norfolk Hampton Roads area. Those are your population centers. Those are your urban centers, and urban centers, as we know, tend to lean Democratic, right? Sure. And then, of course, rural areas always been dependable conservative votes. So if you were to look at a map of Virginia, it would be a lot of red with blots of blue.
Sure.
But those blots of blue were the concentrations. It's a state with about 8 million people, and then Fairfax County alone accounts for more than 1 million of that. And then Norfolk Hampton Roads area, that's got to be at least,
So the story becomes, we got this West Coast that we're seeing some of this, but we've actually won. And I think in Washington, we averted something. Yes. That Washington averted a gas ban, or what we're calling a gas ban. And then really PHCC's for choice, right? We're for consumer choice.
There's nothing stopping anyone from going all electric right now. If they want to, shell out $6,000 to upgrade their electric panel, and then, get a heat pump installed and replace all their appliances, and shell out $30,000 to electrify their house, more power to them. Matter of fact, we know people that can help them with that, right?
Better believe it. So, it may be a great thing for
nothing's stopping them now. But if someone, look, we have a lot of members, they do oil to gas conversions. Sure. Okay. Just right there, doing an oil to gas conversion, how, like, you do that on a broad scale. Think about how much we're reducing carbon emissions that way. We're not only saving, houses from burning heating oil, right? You're saving those delivery trucks, Class B, hazmat, diesel powered trucks, that are probably getting 5 to 6 miles per gallon on a full load, all right, driving around and making those deliveries, and we're doing, our members are doing natural gas connections where, the carbon emissions are much less, and the heating efficiency is just about the same.
Sure.
And also it's a realistic approach, and you already have utilities as we know in New York, in Connecticut, and other parts of the country that will gladly, help a customer make that gas connection so they can run their homes more efficiently.
Yeah. And, I think a misconception is we've built our careers on supplying clean air and clean water. So we're probably the greenest people in the country, but we want to do it responsibly. And we want to make
absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
I think one of the big things, and I see this a lot in lots of regulatory actions, that they ignore the market forces. When it makes sense economically to do that, when the payback is there, that's what people will do. Why do people buy high efficiency gas furnaces instead of an oil furnace? Because it saves them a whole lot of money.
Sure.
Do heat pumps save energy? Yes. Do they work for half the price of a gas furnace? No.
And then depending on what part of the country, see, it's such a diverse country with what's needed in different parts of the country. Heat pumps work great in our area
Oh,
for
sure.
the most part, but in the mountains of our area, oh my gosh, you'll die in the winter. So I mean, it's got to be applied to the right kind of parts of the country.
Yeah, they're perfect in Florida, but the advocates, which is what they're euphemistically called, are all about heat pumps, but they talk about heat pumps in one big bucket. And if you're in New York or Maine or South Bend, Indiana or Minnesota, what you're really looking for is a cold climate heat pump. And that is not your garden variety grandmother's heat pump. That's a pretty complicated, complex, expensive.
And we love to sell them, but
Absolutely.
probably not what's best for the public.
But when you put that into the economic equation,
Right.
the payback is not there. The market forces don't take you there. If it made all the sense to do it, we wouldn't have to make the rule. It would just happen.
That's right. Yeah. So putting a ribbon around that, PHCC is state by state available to help through all this other stuff we've been talking about. Watch out for bills, watch out for movement, watch out. And we have the experience now of getting wins state by state. We're battling in a lot of different places, but we're building a repertoire of how to help logically battle some of these things that are happening state by state. And it's a little bit different in every state. I know New York was completely different than Virginia, correct?
Yeah, it is. New York, what happened up there was that we had a coalition. We built up a very strong coalition. It included the utilities, and that was something that I didn't see in places like Richmond or in Annapolis, where you had a smaller scale bill like that was being introduced. You had National Grid and National Fuel up in New York taking a frontline position on this. And I think that was helpful in at least like alerting ratepayers to what was going on, what the state of New York was trying to do, and what had happened in New York City. And then on top of that, we teamed up with the UA. As you know, unions tend to be more ingrained in Democratic Party politics. But this was one issue where they approached the governor's administration and told them, look, this is not a good idea, and the strength of our coalition behind made a difference in at least getting that language struck. But it required a lot of consumer awareness and just beating drums and mobilizing people and getting everybody. It was all hands on deck. In Virginia, not so much. It was a little bit different in that you had lawmakers that pretty much all had their minds made up. I think that we did have the UA involved down there. But they're not, Virginia is not a union state in the same way that New York is a union state.
They carried a lot more weight in New York to have them with you.
And so that's what happened there. In that regard, yes, Virginia is very much a different state. And, this is one of those issues where, having organized labor on our side, for the most part, I think, really helps to move the needle.
Perfect. So that leads, I think, directly into what's next from a timing standpoint. And then, in May of every year, we go to Washington, our legislative conference. And with COVID, that's been so much easier.
It hasn't actually.
Yeah, it's been easier. Nobody's gone, but yeah, I misspoke. But we're doing it again this year, and I know it's going to be a mixed virtual. We're having our board meeting in DC, so some of us will be there, but we're still shut down in Washington from COVID. And so, can you get into, because I know the gas ban to me leads right into what we're going to be talking about in
right. No, so what's going on is that you don't have as much of a lockdown on Capitol Hill as you did last year. So the difference is that if you want to make an appointment with the congressional office, there's the security restrictions are much more stringent. So if I were to make an appointment with a congressional office, I would show up to the building, I'd go through security, and then I'd have to call the staffer. The staffer would have to come down from the office, escort me to their office for a 15-minute meeting. And when we're finished, if I have my meeting stacked, which is how I like to do things before the pandemic, well, okay, well, I'm done with Congressman A's office. I'm going to go to Congressman B's office. No, it's not going to work like that. So that staffer has to escort me back to the entrance of the building. And if you've ever been to those buildings, they're massive.
Sure.
So then the staffer I have to like budget my time for that staffer to walk me back down to the entrance, call the next staffer to have them come down and escort me to their office, which, you know, government, am I right?
It's almost like they don't want to meet
So-
with us.
Yeah,
Right.
so imagine trying to do that with 100 people. And so, you know, and then on top of that, you have a lot of offices that are still working remotely. They like
Sure.
this idea
They're
of
not even
working from
there.
home.
Yeah, they're not even there. Yeah.
Right. You know, and you have members of Congress, you know, they're particularly in the House of Representatives, not so much the Senate, that are doing proxy voting. So you have members of Congress that just haven't been in DC. They've been in their districts the whole time, which is not a bad thing, because they're with the people that they're serving.
Sure.
So I'm not gonna, you know, it is making harder for people like me to do my jobs and advocate on your behalf, right? So I did not want to run the risk of flying a bunch of people into DC
Sure.
only
Yeah.
for them to only have like maybe one meeting in person.
That would be terrible. Yeah, that would
So I think it's more manageable. We have the board of directors coming into town. You know, I'm going to arrange in-person meetings for you guys. So at least our industry, so PHCC has an in-person presence. You know, we'll supplement that with the virtual presence. So that's why it's important for people that are listening to this podcast, go to our website, register for the legislative conference, and we need to talk about gas bans in addition to workforce issues, in addition to supply chain issues, and bring national attention to these things, because it doesn't just impact the industry, it impacts the people that we serve. You know, the people that we serve, they depend on clean water and clean air in their homes so that they can be healthy, so that their kids can be healthy, so that their parents can be healthy. And, you know, we need to have an environment where our industry can thrive so that our customers, the American people, can be healthy and safe.
And so I think this is actually a huge deal, Mike, with this conference being virtual, that we've got to get people on this virtual piece that, you know, if you set up these meetings. So how exactly, you know, Mike and Mark and Jay, you know, what do you need people to do?
So we did the virtual last year and it was very well run.
Yeah.
The schedule was perfect. You had a schedule of when you were speaking to whatever congressman, senator, staff, mostly. That's who you spoke to. That's who you usually meet with. But it was very well done. We had our bullet points. It actually, as far as that whole assembly went, flawless, I thought. I couldn't have been more happy with the way it turned out. And the same thing again this year, we're doing it the same way. We just need more people to sign up and get involved with this. You could do it from your office. You know when you do it. It doesn't take the whole day. You're not flying to DC. You know when your appointments are, so you could be doing other things. And then when your appointment goes, you log on. Mark and the staff there did a tremendous job setting it up last year. I expect the exact same thing this year. We just need to get people to sign up.
Yeah, we need a lot of people. You know, I know every year when we go to Washington, you guys do like a precursor intro. Aren't you going to do something like that for?
We're going to do the Chuck and Mark show. We're going to have Charlie Cook, who is a political analyst on CNN. He will be coming to the war room. You know, and he will present to our members virtual, like, you know, in the war room, and he'll be presenting. We'll have the equipment set up so he can give us analysis. So, you know, we're pretty excited about that. And then on top of that, we've even extended early bird registration for another week through April 29th. What's today? 20th, 21st, 2nd, 3rd, plus 7th. Through April 29th.
I don't even know what day it is. I love it, guys. I don't either. You were saying that. I was like,
just want to make sure I get the date right. But we've extended early bird another week. So you register now, you know, save money at registration. Don't procrastinate, because if you procrastinate,
go to the PHCC website.
Yes,
right?
sir.
PHCC National. Go ahead, give it to them.
PHCCweb.org. You're going to go to the advocacy tab, and it's a drop-down menu, and you will click on legislative conference.
So do that now. And so
bring your friends.
You don't have to be a member.
Say that again.
You do not have to be a member to attend.
You know, and I also like what you just said, Chuck. Bring a friend, invite five other people, and that's how the big thing. That's a huge thing to introduction.
sure.
That's really how I got really tied into the importance of PHCC. Is I had somebody drag me to Washington, and I was.
Well, if you're worried about, I'm going to go to this meeting and talk to somebody and I don't know what to do, if a group of you are together from the same area, your meetings will all be grouped, so you could be the group from South Bend, Indiana. Me and Dave Frame could be together, or people from Indiana, or people from New Jersey. So
use it as it's a
go to Washington people with you, and
go
you
to
don't
Washington
have to do it
party.
by yourself.
I probably just messed up something, but get everybody in a room and get on there and talk about it, have fun, and I think that's a great opportunity. I love it. Okay,
Mike is right. We have non-member registration as well.
Okay.
On top of that, one of you guys had touched on not knowing what to talk about. You talk about your business, and this is not, you're overall, you're telling the story of our industry. You're telling the story of your business, and this is something that legislators need to hear. And how taxes have an impact on the way you run your business, on how having a robust registered apprenticeship program means that the people that you hire are going to be fully qualified and have a holistic skill set that's going to last them for the rest of their lives. Making sure that they understand that supply chain issues are having an impact on things like getting copper pipe, on getting PVC, on getting lumber. You would think, most people are not going to understand that, when lumber prices went up, that had a huge impact on our industry, because, our members depend on using lumber, as part of their job. They need to tell legislators that, so that they can make that connection and understand, that this is having a huge impact, that it's delaying projects, right? We have members that are falling behind because they can't get materials on time, which means that they're falling back on, they're falling back in their schedule. Has an impact on their business. It has an impact on the customers that depend on them, because when you're doing major work, a major renovation of some kind, that's a big inconvenience to the consumer. So these are stories that you need to tell. You know them much better than I do, and that's why it's important. At least once a year. This is the one time a year where you yourselves can get in front of your legislators, so they can hear it straight from you, instead of the lobbyist, which I like to think I know what I'm talking about a lot of the time, but they need to hear it directly from you.
So if we're what day is it again?
And this is going to be May 24th and May 25th.
So the commercial is, guys, if you want to talk to your legislators, and you don't even have to leave your business, and you can talk directly to your legislators, go to the PHCC website. And what is it again?
It's www.phccweb.org. And then on the advocacy tab, you're going to move your arrow over that, and at the drop-down menu, you're going to click on Legislative Conference.
And Mike and I are challenging everybody that sees this to invite 2 more contractors, and then all you executive directors. We want y'all to have a party, a go to Washington party without leaving your state, and get everybody together. And let's blow this thing up, because the more the merrier. And I would love to see us just kill this thing, and then we'll give Chuck and the Mark show. And then is it Charlie White? Who was it?
Charlie Cook.
Charlie Cook. I was going to let Charlie White, man.
The Cook Political Report.
So. Sorry,
not doing it.
We can clap. So, guys, listen, that is great. And the going to Washington changed how I see our industry. And that whole thing about if you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu.
Yep.
Yeah, and boy, that is so true. And that leads to, one other, really, probably we're winding down here probably, but I did want to bring up one other thing. The PAC fund, Mike, is one of the most important pieces. I know it's not all about money, but we struggle in off election years to raise money. And so can you talk about how important it is to raise money, and maybe how a good way for people to do that?
Well, yeah, obviously it's not all about money, but it's about money.
Yeah.
So there's 2 ways. The PAC, our Political Action Committee, PAC, you can donate 2 ways. The most important and most productive way that you donate is in a personal contribution. personal contributions we can use to actually donate to a legislature, somebody running for Congress, somebody in a primary. We can use that money to donate to get in the door. So what we get is requests from members all over the country. They know somebody, they want to go to a fundraiser. They think, this guy's good. He's going to be on our side of some issues. They'll send a request to us. We'll vote on it and then, issue a check. But that we need money to do that. So that's a personal contribution. On occasion, we'll get corporate contributions. We can only use that money to administer what we're doing.
Yeah,
Correct, Mark? Isn't that
Yeah.
the case?
So
So that, that is less it's valuable, but less valuable. We keep track of of all the legislators who are voting on bills that pertain to us. So we know, are they voting with us? Well, you're going to be more likely to get a contribution, obviously.
Yeah, you've
So
got a
we keep-
scorecard. You got a scorecard.
Yeah, we have a scorecard. Exactly. We have a scorecard. Right now, we're pretty good financially. I think roughly we have 35,000 in the account. We have a goal of 50. Not going to take a lot. I know do we have set up, Mark, where we can do monthly?
we have, you go to the website, same drop-down menu under advocacy, going to click on PHCC PAC. You have an opportunity to make monthly contributions, small dollar contributions, which is one of the strategies that we want to pursue because it works well. We've seen it work well with presidential campaigns. Obama did it well. Bernie did it well. Trump pretty much almost perfected it. And so, those small dollar contributions, when you have a lot of people giving a small amount of money incrementally, it adds up so much more quickly. And I crunched the numbers. I think if we had 100 people contribute $25 per month for 1 year, I think we would have somewhere around $50,000. And so that's huge, and it's such a small amount. And the more money we have, the easier it is for us to support more candidates that have an interest in seeing our industry succeed and building those relationships so that they can help us. They stay in Congress longer. They can introduce a bill that helps us. They can vote against legislation that's going to hurt us. And it doesn't take a lot. We don't need, obviously large dollar contributions are nice. Yeah. But if you can only do, a small amount over a period of time, those contributions are equally as powerful.
Yeah. And so Jeremiah Wolf is heading up the PAC fund this year, right?
Yes, sir. He's the PAC chairman. I
didn't invite him today because I didn't want to be, the fourth best looking guy on this call or the fifth or whatever. But yeah, so Jeremiah would make us all look bad, this stinking young guy, but Jeremiah Wolf's awesome. But let's do another challenge then. So everybody, I'm going to do this when I go sign up for legislative. I'm either going to do the $300 or donation, or I'm going to do, sign up for the $25 a month. Because if we do that, then we'll get past the $50,000 and we'll get moving on that. So I'm going to challenge everybody that goes and signs up for legislative to after you sign up, to go ahead and go down to the next and click on it and do a donation to the PAC fund and do a personal donation, whether it's $100, $200, $300, but get us moving on that direction, because then make that a habit. So I'm going to challenge everybody to do that. And Jeremiah, you owe me. Guys, anything else? I think we've been on here a little bit over an hour. Anything else for the good of the organization and the Mark and Chuck and Mike show?
Please sign up for the legislative conference. That's the more the merrier. Join the club.
Join the club. Mark, you want to close out with anything?
So let's have a strong showing at the legislative conference. Let's demonstrate to the people in Washington that our industry is strong and that there is support for what we are trying to achieve.
Pretty good. Chuck, you want to follow that?
Well, I'd like to say thank you all to the members, because you're putting yourself forward for the better of the industry, and supporting PHCC and doing what you do on top of running your businesses is really important. And you know, you're the backbone of the industry, and it's our industry. If we can't say it's our industry, who can? So, you know, thank you for stepping up and helping us and growing our organization.
Yeah, thank you, Chuck. And I tell you guys, that's hard to top, but you know, there's some moments as a member of any organization you're in or any church where you become, you know, really proud of what your organization's doing. And you guys are on the front lines of that pride that we have because, you know, and Mike said it earlier, we need more members involved to understand what we're doing, but we're doing these, you guys, the legislative and regulatory work we're doing is for the entire industry and not just our members. And I think there's something really special about that and the success that we have together and the leadership that you guys are projecting every day to make all of our states better, make our industry better, and federally make us better. And that's what it's all about. So congrats to you guys. Really, really appreciate you taking the time today. And it went a lot better than I thought it would. I'm just kidding. But you know, it's a really important part of our association, and you guys are representing us well as always, and we greatly appreciate it. Thanks so much for today. I would ask anybody on here to, let's one more time, sign up for the legislative conference and sign up to donate to the PAC fund when you sign up, because it's really important for us. And that's May 24th, 25th.
May 24th and 25th. That's Tuesday and Wednesday.
All right, guys. So thanks so much, guys. We really appreciate the time today. And listen, send us more opportunities. If you have an opportunity on an idea on what we can talk about on this podcast, we are all over the different media platforms, Google, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and especially podcast at phccrocks.com. And thanks again to Mark, Chuck, and especially Mike Dolan for all his work as a volunteer leading us in this effort across the country. And PHCC Rocks is produced and brought to you by Amy Anderson and Elizabeth King from GSM Services and Charlotte Parham of PHCC National, and edited by PHCC National. I'm your host, and it's been a pleasure for me today, guys. Hope you have a great day, and glad you got to come hear more reasons why PHCC rocks.